All right, folks, let us talk about the Jewish law. So one of the fundamental beliefs in Judaism is that God has provided God's chosen people with a collection of sacred laws and ordinances, and it is the duty of Jews to faithfully adhere to these sacred laws as transcribed by Moses in the Torah. Now, probably the most well-known body of laws that appears in the Torah would be the Ten Commandments. But one thing to be aware of is that in Judaism, the Ten Commandments are considered to be a summary of God's laws. That is, the Ten Commandments are further elucidated by hundreds of specific laws in the books of Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And in general, there are three different types of laws that appear in the Torah. The first type would be what we might call physical laws or hygiene and dietary laws, such as kosher laws. We also find what we might call spiritual laws or laws regarding devotion, prayer, and repentance, such as laws concerning the confession of sin, laws against worshiping other gods, and laws concerning holy days to be observed, etc. And lastly, we have what are called ethical laws or laws regarding human conduct. So laws concerning marriage, theft, the treatment of others, charity, etc. So we're going to take a look at just three examples of these laws in the upcoming slides. So an example of a physical law would be the following from the book of Leviticus. Do not eat meat with the blood still in it. Do not practice divination or soothsaying. Do not clip your hair at the temples, nor trim the edges of your beard. Do not lacerate your bodies for the dead, and do not tattoo yourselves. I am the Lord. So again, this is considered to be what we might call a physical law because it's concerning how one treats the body, concerns hygiene, concerns how one should eat meat. Another example comes from the book of Deuteronomy of a spiritual law. Observe the month of Abib, the grain harvest season, by keeping the Passover of the Lord your God, since it was in the month of Abib that he brought you by night out of Egypt. You shall offer the Passover sacrifice from your flock or your herd to the Lord your God in the place which he chooses as the dwelling place of his name. So we have here a quote-unquote spiritual law which details that the Jews must observe the month of Abib and the Passover sacrifice. And lastly, something that can be considered in quotes an ethical law comes again from the book of Deuteronomy. If one of your kinsmen in any community is in need in the land which your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart nor close your hand to him in his need. Instead you shall open your hand to him and freely lend him enough to meet his need. So here we clearly have a law concerning how to treat others, in this case to be charitable and generous towards your neighbor. Now, here's a crucial question. Why should the Jewish people follow the laws of the Torah? Well, generally speaking, according to the Torah, the Jewish people should follow the laws for two reasons. One is because the Jewish people will flourish on earth if they are faithful to the law. Well, what does this mean? Well, let's take a look at this quote from the book of Deuteronomy. If you will only heed his every commandment that I am commanding you today, loving the Lord your God and serving him with all your heart and with all your soul, then he will give the rain for your land in its season, the early rain and the later rain. And you will gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil, and he will give grass in your fields for your livestock, and you will eat your fill. So in other words, if the Jewish people adhere to every one of God's commandments, then they will flourish in the land. God will give rain, grain, wine, oil, and give grass for the livestock. So there will be great abundance in the land if the Jewish people are faithful to God's law. But there is also a second reason. The second reason is that the law of God is considered to be holy, and hence, if the Jewish people follow it, it will make the Jewish people holy. So let's look again at a selection from the Torah, this time from the book of Exodus. It says here, "Now if you will obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So, put simply, the laws have a kind of sanctifying quality to them, where if one follows the holy law, they will become holy. And because God is holy, one will become closer to God. Now, here is another crucial question, which is discussed by observant Jews. How strictly ought the Jewish people to follow God's law? That is, again, there are hundreds of laws and ordinances that are very, very specific to everyday life. So how strictly ought the Jewish people to follow these laws? Well, it depends upon which denomination of Judaism one belongs to. So in the United States, there are three major Jewish denominations. The first would be Orthodox Judaism, and according to Orthodox Jews, the laws of the Torah are perfect and eternal, and therefore should be followed strictly by Jews in today's society. And exactly how these laws are followed are influenced by classical rabbinic interpretation. The second denomination is called Conservative Judaism, where the laws of the Torah are considered divinely inspired and that they should be followed faithfully, that is, as best as one can. And exactly how these laws are followed are influenced by not only classical interpretation, but also contemporary rabbinic interpretation. And the most liberal form of Judaism in the United States is called Reform Judaism, which teaches that the laws of the Torah are general guidelines for living and should be followed in moderation. That is, for Reform Jews, certain laws are ancient and outdated and should not be followed in modern society. So in conclusion, the Jewish people have an obligation to adhere to the laws of the Torah. 2, if the Jewish people follow these laws, they will flourish in the world and also become closer to God. And lastly, how strictly one adheres to the law depends upon which denomination of Judaism one belongs to.